Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we are unpacking a literal paradigm shift in how we understand our own minds and how we treat our internal thoughts. So imagine for a second that you've just received some absolutely devastating personal news. Or maybe you've experienced a massive setback at work, but you have to walk straight into a meeting right after. What do? You paste on a bright smile and you force yourself to act like everything is perfectly fine. It's completely exhausting, isn't it? Well, if you've ever felt totally drained from trying to just think positive, or felt like you've got a whole chaotic committee of conflicting voices in your head, you are in exactly the right place. We are going to explore the incredibly fascinating world of internal family systems, or IFS for short, and uncover why forcing positivity might actually be doing you way more harm than good. Let's dive right in.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the trap of toxic positivity.
You know, for decades, mainstream self-help has preached the gospel of reframing. We all know the drill, right? If you have a negative thought, you are supposed to immediately flip it into a positive, growth-oriented one. But we really need to stop and question this universally accepted advice. Are all positive thoughts actually healthy? Well, the sources we're looking at today drop a massive reality bomb. The answer is a resounding no. See, when we constantly reframe our reality, what we are essentially doing is snatching the microphone right out of the hands of a part of ourselves that is hurt, sad, or angry. We just forcefully hand that mic over to a rational or positive part. Now, it kind of feels like we're fixing the problem in the moment, but silencing our real pain with a forced smile, that is actually a super dangerous game to play with our emotional and mental health.
Sure, forcing positivity might actually work in a short term. It might be exactly what you need to survive a highly stressful afternoon or get through that one tough meeting. But here's the hidden reality. Suppressed negativity literally doesn't just disappear into the ether just because you decided not to look at it. No way. Those negative thoughts and those incredibly valid feelings, they stay right where they are. And actually, it's worse than that. They quietly grow in sadness, frustration, and pain. They just fester in the background, building up this immense pressure while you're busy pretending the whole shebang is perfectly fine.
And when we suppress that negativity, it inevitably leaks out in other ways. You might feel slowed down, just constantly struggling to get through your daily plans. You might feel this lingering irritation, or suddenly get hit with an unknown sadness with absolutely zero apparent cause. You might constantly feel like you're simply not doing enough, or eventually you might face literal explosions. We're talking burnout, panic attacks, or even physical illness. And to cope with these incredibly uncomfortable feelings, what do? We become double black belt masters at numbing. We distract ourselves with endless, breathless Netflix binges, frantic doom scrolling on social media late into the night, or overworking ourselves to the point of total exhaustion just to keep the noise away. But guys, the noise is still there.
Moving on to Section 2, Meet Your Inner Family. So, developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz back in the 1980s, internal family systems therapy is built on this really fascinating core assumption. The mind isn't a single monolithic unit. Instead, think of your mind as being made up of different slices, kind of like a complex, multi-layered pizza. It is perfectly natural and, honestly, totally normal to have a diverse committee in your head. Having different voices doesn't mean you're losing your grip, it just means you're human. You might have a spicy, highly driven slice, like a relentless perfectionist part, keeping you successful, sitting right next to a sweet slice, like an inner nurturer who just wants you to take a nap. IFS is all about recognizing this natural multiplicity and learning how to help these radically different parts actually understand each other and get along. In the IFS framework, the cast of characters in your mind is basically broken down into three main types of parts. First up, we have the protectors, and these are split into two distinct groups, managers and firefighters. Managers are your proactive planners. They want to keep you safe by keeping you organized, controlling your environment, and avoiding any potential risks. Firefighters, on the other hand, are reactive. When intense emotions flare up, boom, they swoop in with immediate distractions, like that sudden, overwhelming urge to eat a whole pizza or binge a TV show just to numb the pain. Both of these protectors, the proactive managers and the reactive firefighters, work tirelessly to guard the third group, the exiles. Exiles are the deeply vulnerable, hidden parts of us that carry old emotional wounds, profound shame, and fear. Your protectors are basically acting as 24/7 bodyguards, so you never have to feel the overwhelming pain of those exiles.
Which brings us to Section 3, the 8 C's of self. Now, right at the center of all those competing hypervigilant parts is what IFS calls the self. The self is the calm, compassionate CEO of your inner world. Think of the self as that wise, steady, exceptionally kind friend who always has your back no matter what. Unlike your parts, which can get highly reactive, dramatic, or extreme in how they handle things, the self is perfectly steady. It doesn't try to boss the other parts around, and it never ever judges them for their intense feelings. It simply leads with deep understanding, presence, and care.
And you know the self is running the show when you experience these 8 superpowers, known in IFS as the 8 C's. We've got calmness, curiosity, compassion, clarity, confidence, courage, creativity, and connectedness. When the frantic chaos of your inner protectors and the deep sorrow of your exiles finally subsides and the self steps up to lead, you feel grounded and highly capable. Our sources describe it beautifully. When the self is leading, it's literally like finally finding the Wi-Fi password to your soul. Suddenly, all the static drops away, the signal is crystal clear, and everything just connects.
Let's move to Section 4, the 6 F's framework.
Okay, so the landscape of the mind is clear. We have our protective parts, our vulnerable exiles, and our steady self. But how do we actually get the self to connect with these parts? That is where we use a really practical toolkit known as the 6 F's. And I want to emphasize here, these aren't rigid, strict clinical rules you have to force yourself through. Rather, they're a gentle, repeatable framework designed specifically to help yourself build genuine trust with your parts over time. First, you find the part that's acting up. Maybe it's a tight knot of dread in your stomach. Second, you focus your full attention inward on it. Third, you flesh out the part by learning about its needs and what it looks or feels like to you. Then we have feel toward, which is absolutely crucial, and we'll unpack that in just a second. Next is befriend, where you genuinely appreciate the part's protective intentions, even if you really don't like its disruptive methods. And finally, you ask about its fears. What is this protector so terrified would happen if it stopped doing its job? This vulnerable question is what usually reveals the hidden exile underneath.
Let's zoom in on that 4th step for a second, because this perfectly highlights the genius of IFS. Ask yourself, how do I feel about this part? This is your critical diagnostic check to ensure the self is actually the one driving the bus. If you ask yourself this question, and your knee-jerk internal response is a harsh, I hate this part, or an impatient, I just want it to go away, then, spoiler alert, you are not in yourself. A judgmental protector part has actually hijacked the microphone. But if you ask, how do I feel about this part, and your answer is a soft, I feel open, and I'm honestly really curious about why it's doing this, then congratulations, your self is present, and you are ready to genuinely connect and heal. And hey, if you find that a protector is in the way, blocking that curiosity, you simply ask it, politely, if it would be willing to just step aside for a minute to give you a little bit of space to explore.
And finally, Section 5, cultivating true inner harmony. Ultimately, IFS is such a game changer because it emphasizes profound compassion over rigid control. Instead of trying to force a bright, shiny positivity over a very real wound, and instead of trying to silence your negative thoughts or banish your harsh inner critic, IFS invites you to understand and embrace every single part of yourself. We're not just swallowing a forced smile to mask the pain anymore. You listen to your parts with deep, genuine curiosity, and by doing that, you actually unburden them. You turn a noisy, chaotic, and totally exhausting internal orchestra into a beautiful, collaborative, and harmonious symphony.
So I want to leave you all with a final, provocative question to think about today. If you stopped forcing positivity right now, what would your inner voices tell you? What are those hidden, heavily burdened protective parts so desperately trying to communicate? I highly encourage you to take a moment today, tap into yourself's boundless curiosity, and just listen. You might be incredibly surprised by what you hear. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and happy exploring on your path to inner harmony.